The Dallas Cowboys have re-signed safety Jayron Kearse. What does that mean for the rest of the defense and the rest of their offseason plans? All that and more on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And today's show is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can follow Landon at McCool. Landon, let's start with this. The Cowboys have re-signed Jayron Kearse. What are your initial thoughts?
Man, for my initial thoughts, obviously, it's great to have him back. I mean, I think anyone who watched the Cowboys last year knew how important that Kearse was to the team, and how he had kind of developed into this kind of safety linebacker hybrid that had played on the nickel and just really played, I think, every game this year. Was near the leader in near the top of the leaderboard in tackles.
Yep.
Had like nine tackles for loss. It had some pressures. Just played an incredible all around game this year. And then I think my next thought was, it's an interesting number. I mean, it's $5 million a year. It looks like. I mean, give or take a little bit depending on what can be earned. But I think it kind of spoke to what the kind of scenario that you and I had mentioned previously about his market, that I imagine that the Cowboys kind of went to him with a lower offer because they knew that the market wasn't going to be very strong for him. He took some time to kind of see exactly what the market looked like, and then came back on kind of a deal between probably what these two sides wanted, probably closer to what the Cowboys wanted, to be honest. So I think
look at the deal.
It's an interesting deal.
2 years, $10 million, $5 million a piece.
Yeah.
I really look at it more like a linebacker market, right? That's what you're paying an off-the-ball linebacker. So that's kind of what he is, right? Like, he's a box guy that's going to match up against tight ends and stuff, and that seems like a very, very fair price. Even if it's just as a special teams guy, let's say he just, for whatever reason, falls off and he's just a special teams guy. That's kind of the market for special teams players at this point. So it's a really nice deal.
Yeah, it really is. And I think, he kind of falls into this category of player that, when he's on your team, you really love him. You love having him because he makes plays. He's a solid tackler. He's reliable in the run game. Like you said, he does things that are kind of problems that the defensive coordinators have to solve constantly. How do you cover a tight end? How do you cover running backs out of the backfield? What personnel do you use? This guy's perfect for those kind of things. I think the issue that he ran into is that, if you sign him to your team as a safety, you're definitely going to need a third safety on this team. Like,
Yep.
you're not going to reliably be able to play with him and another safety as your only two safeties that are worth getting on the field, just because you're going to want to play him as nickel linebacker. You're mostly going to want to play him in the box. You can play him in the back, and he definitely took snaps at, in the slot and in the back end of the field. But you're definitely going to want a third reliable safety in order to do that. And so I guess when you consider that, and then you look at what the market is, you can see maybe why he didn't get the money that he was hoping to on the open market. Because even if you do sign him, like I said, you're still going to have to go out and probably find another safety to kind of supplement him when he's moving around a little bit. So I think the Cowboys probably valued him more than a lot of other teams did because they saw what he can do for them. But I also think that, Kearse is one of these guys who very well could be suffering from, being around before the NFL was ready for a player like this, right? Like, I think that there will be other folks that will kind of follow along in his lead, I think, in the future, and will make more money than him. Unfortunate for him, but great for the Cowboys.
All right, let's look at the Cowboys secondary, right? Their safeties. So they signed Malik Hooker, 2 years. Was it $5 million or something like that? Something incredibly cheap. Or 2 years, $8 million. I think that's what it was. But only a few million guaranteed. They have Donovan Wilson on a 1-year deal. They have Jayron Kearse now back on a 2-year deal, and they still have Israel Makamu. Is there room for another safety there? Or do you think the Cowboys view him more as a linebacker, which means there's definitely room for another safety there?
I think that's a good question. I think part of it is going to be hinging on how they feel about Mukuamu. I think there is a good chance that you start to see Mukuamu start to take more snaps this year. So maybe what they do is they kind of leave the safety position as it is, and then see if someone like one of the guys that was on the team last year could come in as kind of a special teams player, safety, sort of like
It will be Tyler Coyle. It's going to be the guy, right?
Yeah, Tyler Coyle or someone like that, who would just kind of come in and supplement that role. I don't know that they are at a spot where they need to go out and get another safety unless, like maybe that's the best player available in the draft or something. I don't think it will prevent you from getting a safety. I don't think you need to go out and get a safety.
No, I don't think they need to go out and get a safety before the draft. I think you wait and see how the draft plays out. And I haven't heard a whisper about Devontae Casey's market. Not at all. But if Casey's still available in May and June, could you bring him back on a 1-year, $2 million deal? Why not?
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think, the key here is that they're probably at a good spot where they don't need to spend a bunch of money or a draft pick if they don't want to. If a player fell to them in the draft that they really like, sure, pull the trigger there. But I think that they're at a spot now where even, not just the normal glad handing, we signed a guy so that we don't have to draft the player. I honestly believe that they could go in and get out of the draft and be satisfied with where their defensive backfield is right now.
If your safeties in week 1 against whoever they're playing is Kearse, Hooker, and Wilson, you're fine with that. You can absolutely go win games that way. My guess is they're gonna want to add, another starting caliber player at either linebacker or safety, and then Kearse will fill in the other spot. Does that make sense? Right? If there's a linebacker that they grab in round 2, whether it's Chad Muma or Channing Tindall, now you can move Kearse back to safety, and you're more than fine. I think something like that is still going to come.
I agree. I think that's a smart move.
Okay. All right. We're going to answer some more of your guys' Twitter questions today because we haven't done that in a couple of weeks, and we really, really wanted to get to it. But first, let's take a break to tell you guys about Bet Online. It's that time of year again as college basketball tournaments are finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games, minus blackjack. I could play blackjack all day long. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, a couple really interesting Twitter questions and some people thinking outside the box. So I'm sure you saw yesterday, Landon, that the Falcons traded Matt Ryan. It's pretty pretty clear that the Falcons are in a rebuild. So we have a few listeners that want to know, is there anybody that the Cowboys could go out and trade for from the Falcons that Dan Quinn would know? And I've got some names. Let's first start with Grady Jarrett. Now, this one wouldn't have been possible if the Cowboys would have signed Randy Gregory just because they don't have the cap space. However, Grady Jarrett has 1 year left on his deal. He's 29 years old. He's got a base salary of $16.5 million, and the Falcons could save $16.5 million if they cut him. Would you be interested in trading for Grady Jarrett right now?
I mean, only if you feel good about the idea of potentially signing him to a new contract, right? Because I don't think trading him, I guess it depends on what the trade compensation is, right? But I think that if you feel confident that you can sign him to an extension and maybe lower that number a little bit, because I don't mind paying him 1 year, $16 million, because I think adding that kind of player to your interior pass rush is going to pay severe dividends. Mm-hmm. But I do think that it would be a lot more beneficial if the Cowboys were able to get him in here and then extend him to like a 2 or 3 year deal where they could push some of that money around a little bit better and give themselves a little bit more flexibility there. But as far as a player goes, yes, I'm certainly interested in. I think Grady Jarrett is one of the few players who is probably available and can provide serious interior pass rush, which is something that is, I think really, really valuable nowadays, especially in the short game, in the quick game. You need pressure quickly, and the quickest way to get pressure is right in somebody's face. No quarterback likes that. And I think it would pair well with what the Cowboys are trying to build on the outside with Parsons and with Lawrence and with Fowler and all the guys that they have out there.
Now here's the knock on Grady Jarrett. He has 5 sacks over the last 2 years, and he's already 29 years old. Like, are you trading and paying a player that's already past their physical peak? We've seen a couple of these defensive linemen in the past, like the undersized defensive tackles typically just don't age well. Like Geno Atkins, basically done at age 29, age 30, out of the league. Now Jarrett's been a little healthier than that, but he fell due to some knee concerns. I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. It's just you are trading for a guy who might be way past his prime.
Yeah, that's that's what you're doing when you sign people in free agency, when you trade for them. This is why the Cowboys prefer to sign their own, because they have better information on these guys, really good information, as opposed to guys that are on the other team. So I think it's a risk that's worth taking. I think if you can extend him, get that money moved around a little bit so it's not as severe, you're going to be able to hopefully buoy him a little bit more than Atlanta was able to with guys that you can rotate in. And you have guys at defensive tackle, you have bodies. So like, it's not like you're going to be putting all your eggs in his basket, pass rush wise, or even in the defensive interior. You have plenty of guys that you can rotate in that you feel comfortable with, and hopefully get the best out of him. So it's a risk. You are trading for a 29-year-old under tackle. There's no way around that. But I think it's also an opportunity that the Cowboys don't have in a lot of other spots, because there aren't a lot of guys available to be had that are good interior pass rushers, which is, like I said, a valuable commodity to have on a defensive line nowadays.
The next one's Dion Jones, who was a Pro Bowler in 2017. He's actually been pretty durable. He's played at least 16 games in 3 straight seasons. But again, you're trading for a soon-to-be 28-year-old linebacker that is due, I believe, $9.6 million in base salary this year, $12 million in base salary next year.
That one's a little tougher. It's weird because I probably have similar, hope that they will produce, that Dion will produce similar to what
it's basically a 2-year, $21 million deal, by the way.
And that's a lot of money for a linebacker that's 28 years old. And that's my issue. I think you could kind of bring him in, and he definitely would have a fit on this team. But I also think that it's a lot of money for a guy that like I said, is kind of near the end of his career. He's an undersized linebacker, and despite being very durable, that athleticism is not going to be where it was when he got drafted, or even 3 or 4 years ago. So I think if you're doing that, you might as well just sign Bobby Wagner.
Exactly,
that's what I was going to say.
Without having to spend the draft capital, right? And you can restructure the contract however you want to structure it.
Yeah, and you're not, like you said, you're not giving up a draft pick. That's why, to me, like, I honestly think that the reason you probably haven't seen someone like Dion Jones traded yet is because the linebacker market is still the way it is, right? Like, I think you need some of those other guys to kind of clear out before teams are starting to get desperate at the linebacker position to kind of trade for that kind of contract.
2 more guys from Atlanta. 2 of them near and dear to your heart. Marlon Davidson, defensive end/tackle from Auburn, who Dan Quinn drafted in 2020, and since Dan Quinn left, has really struggled.
Yeah, he's an inside-outside guy. I know at Auburn they really kind of struggled to kind of find a position for him. He played mostly defensive end at Auburn, but it was clear, coming out that he was going to be a tweener, because he didn't. He's one of those guys who's big like a defensive tackle, but he's not going to be able to win that way in the NFL. But at the same time, like he didn't really have a lot of success moving inside as a defensive tackle either. So he's kind of neither nor. I like him as a rotational guy, as a down roster rotational guy. I'm certainly not, trading any valuable pieces to go and get a Marlon Davidson.
I mean, you kind of have this guy a little bit in Chauncey Golston.
Golston, yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's only so many spots on your roster for a base left end that kicks inside to 3 technique, right? So especially
if you're still trying to sign Zadarius Smith, who is, I guess, still having dinner in Minnesota right now. I haven't heard anything since then. It's crazy.
I know that Mall of America is pretty big there, so they're probably walking around.
They got lost. They got lost. Is what
they might have got lost. All right, last one. Richie Crayon.
Bring it. I mean, what do they want? Like
he really struggled last year. He hardly played at all, but that's not surprising considering smaller school safety.
Yeah. I mean, I is he really traded? Is he really?
No, probably not. He's only in his second year. That's probably the type of guy that the Falcons want to hold on to. But I just thought we should mention him.
We should mention him. I gotta say, like, just kind of on the note, I'm happy and satisfied with where the Cowboys secondary in general is. I feel like they could add some pieces here and there, but honestly, they could play games with the defensive backfield that they have right now.
Yeah. Of all the spots on the roster that they need to address and fix, secondary is one of the last ones. Like they're legitimately good there. So all right, let's take one more break and we'll get to a bunch more questions. I know that you guys are really wanting us to get to some of these questions, but let me tell you guys about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock up on all the parts that you need. Rock Auto has everything you need, from engine control modules, brake parts, motor oil, and even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or your daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Best of all, prices at rockauto.com are always reliably low, and they're the same for professionals or do-it-yourselfers. Why spend up to twice as much for the same parts? Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. All right, next question. This one from Austin. If the Cowboys don't address their edge need in free agency, what do you think about David Ojabo, the Michigan edge rusher who just tore his Achilles? Would you be interested in picking him there?
Are they saying at 24?
At 24.
I don't think so. I mean,
where do you think he ends up going? Because I think before the Achilles, he probably was a top 15 pick at worst.
Yeah. I mean, look, we could talk. I think there's two issues here, right? We could talk about what Ojabo's current, draft stock is at post injury, but we should also talk about the fact that I don't think the Cowboys will draft him, right? Like, I mean, I think maybe there's like this element of the Cowboys don't mind taking risks at blah 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 position, in second round, hurt players, blah blah blah. I don't know if that still exists now that you've got a head coach who's kind of in a tenuous, coaching seat position.
At the same time, though, a lot of their moves this year have been kind of looking to 2023 and beyond, right? I mean, there's a chance Ojabo could play this year, but if you could take a player at 24 that you believe is a top 15 talent and he fits the mold for what you're looking for on defense, 4.55 edge rusher. I mean, I get it. It still seems a little bit high, but I get it.
Maybe they would, but not for me. I wouldn't because I mean, first of all, if I'm McCarthy, I'm like absolutely not. Like I would just throw a fit. If
you're McCarthy, you can't take that player. You can't take that somewhere else.
Absolutely. So if you want to talk about it, I mean, I don't think this guy's going to be available at 56, but I mean, I would say if for some reason he was available at 56,
that's when it's more palatable, right?
That's when it's palatable. But at this point, you need someone who's going to come in and contribute right away as your first rounder. And frankly, you need that in your second rounder too. So, I mean, it would be a risk even to take someone like Ojabo at, I mean, even if we're talking about like, what's the Alabama Mechie, the receiver from Alabama, right?
Or Jameson Williams, which one?
I mean, Well, but see, even then, like those guys will at least be ready this year. Those guys will at least be on the field at some point, maybe even before training camp. Whereas Ojabo just got injured with an Achilles heel. So he's done this year. Like it's just not happening until at very least the end of the season. So I would imagine that, despite, I think, like I said, there's two conversations here. What do you think Ojabo's draft stock is in general now that post injury? I think it's probably, like you said, somewhere between 25 and 50, right?
Yeah.
I think would the Cowboys take him with their first? Definitely not their first. I couldn't imagine. I think that at this point the Cowboys would be hesitant to take him with their second. I mean, I think if he fell to them, it would be very extremely tempting. But I think in general, you have to be wary about guys that are going to be taking a complete redshirt year and taking them in the first 2 rounds. You need starters there right away.
What's so difficult about this one is Ojabo was already a bit of a projection. Like of all the guys that we were talking about in the top 15, he was the one with the most unknown, right? We did a podcast on him, and he was the rawest of all the edge guys we watched. And on top of that, an Achilles injury for an edge guy is brutal, right? Because that's the you're planting off of your feet. You're trying to be explosive. Yeah, my guess is
it's both things, right? Like it's the fact that he needs a year of development to even be like kind of a full-time player, and he's not going to get that year this year. So now you're basically waiting 2 years to see if this guy develops, and suddenly now you're resting his re-signing process on his 3rd and 4th years, or potential 5th year if he's the first round.
Well, it's not
easy.
That's why I think somebody like the Lions, who have picked 32 in this draft, could easily take him. They're in a rebuilding process anyway. And actually, this would probably help them tank again next year. If the plan is they get a quarterback, you draft them, you let them sit for a year. You also get the added benefit of getting the 5th-year option, right? To kind of help you decide things.
Yep.
I think that's like somewhere around there is where he's ultimately going to land. Well,
that makes sense. Yeah. I just don't think it works for the Cowboys. That's the issue.
I agree. The Cowboys are in a different spot. All right. This one from Zach. Do you have a pet cat so far in this year's class, Landon? Is there anybody that you've watched that you just absolutely love?
I mean, I've liked a lot of these guys. I don't know if there's been someone that's like jumped out to me as I feel like the guys that I really like are guys that are well liked guys. Like I really liked watching Zion Johnson. I really liked watching Olave. Williamson was great to watch. There's a lot of the guys that I liked watching. I mean, Linderbaum. It's like the guys that are fun to watch. Maybe if I'm putting my my stamp on someone that I particularly liked, I don't know where you're playing him. I don't know what round you're drafting him in. And I kind of think I've forgotten his first name too, but that linebacker cornerback from Nebraska, is that
Joe Dodeman?
Joe Dodeman. Yeah. He's fun, man. He's just fun to watch. Yeah. I don't know that you take him anywhere, other than like 4th, maybe 5th round.
Yeah, I think because of all the medical stuff, he's a day 3 pick. But hey, if you get after the top 110, 115 picks, why not? Because he can play on nickel packages right away.
Absolutely, special teams. He's a very interesting player just in his kind of skill set, I would say. So I don't know. Outside of that, I haven't really found a guy that's like, my guy necessarily. I tend to kind of like a lot of the generic folks that I've seen so far. What about you?
I'm with you. I like Zion's one of my favorite players in this class just because he's so clean, right? He's just such an easy guy to like. I got 2. I really like Troy Anderson, the linebacker from Montana.
From Montana. Yeah.
Who played quarterback, running back, linebacker, and just set records like crazy. I think he's really fun and he's really athletic. So anytime in day 2, go ahead and gamble. I really like Charlie Kohler, the tight end from Iowa State. He's 6'7", 260 pounds. Not super dynamic after the catch, but he's just going to fall down and get you a first down every time because he's so big. Also, know that the Cowboys were at Iowa State's.
I was going to say, Kellen was up there today, wasn't he?
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that's somebody that they're looking at because he kind of profiles as a tight end too, right? Somebody that can just play in line, that can be a goal line guy, that can block a little bit. I kind of like Charlie Kolar. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously it looks like Dallas is up there to check out somebody, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was him. Yeah.
All right, next question, and we've got this question from several people, but they all want to know: do you see any scenario where the Cowboys would trade up for Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle from Georgia?
No.
Yeah,
Trading up for a defensive tackle. Look, I mean, guys, baby steps, right? Let's draft
one first.
Let's draft one in the first round first, and then we can talk about maybe in a couple years trading up for one if that works out. But I can't imagine both things happening, right?
I don't see that either. Now, if the Cowboys had a bunch of third and fourth round picks and you just wanted to move up from like 24 to 18 or something like that, okay. But the Cowboys don't have a lot of top 100 draft picks in this class, and they've got several pressing needs. That draft picks are going to be incredibly important for them.
What does 24 plus 5 for fifth round picks get us? Like
right, 22. Yeah, probably not a lot.
Well, it's like the equivalent of a third round, like a low third. So what is a 24 and a low third give you? Like
probably like to 19 or 20.
So you could do it. You could give up your entire fifth round and probably move 2 spots. But I mean, I don't know if that's going to get you Jordan Davis though.
No, you're going to have to go up inside the top 12 or so. I don't know if you saw Mike Tomlin, but the Steelers had picked 20, and they asked him at Georgia's Pro Day about Jordan Davis. And he said, "I'm a huge fan. I'm in the Jordan Davis fan club." And they asked if he would draft him. He's like, "I think he's going to be hugging Roger Goodell well before we get the chance to pick him." And the Steelers drafted 20. So it tells you where the rest of the NFL kind of thinks about Jordan Davis. So last question. A lot of people were wondering about wide receivers now that they have James Washington, they have CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup coming off the torn ACL. Is there a receiver in this class that you really like after the first round, or is there a type of receiver you think the Cowboys should be looking for?
I actually like a bunch of these guys. I mean, I think everyone who has listened to the rest of Cowboys podcasting knows about Sky Moore, and I'll let Jeff Kavanaugh go ahead and pitch Sky Moore for everybody. But I like him a lot. I don't know if he's still outside the first round type guy, but
he's just because I've been doing these consensus sports and I look at the top 10 draft media people, seems like it's second, early third round is still where he's going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's someone that's worth looking into. I think there's lots of these different types that are interesting. I mean, and I think that the Cowboys have kind of set themselves up in a way that you could probably you don't necessarily need to go get a specific type of guy at this point. I think that's the key thing. I think they would probably love to get another outside guy.
Well, here's the question I was actually having with somebody this morning for the Cowboys. What do you think their most important trait is for a receiver right now? Like when they're looking at receivers and say, this is what we want from a receiver. Is it ability to get open? Is it contested catch? Or is it making plays after the catch? Because I've got a feeling if they said Amari wasn't a scheme fit, I'm just wondering if they're transitioning more to guys like Treylon Burks, the guys who are catch and make plays after the catch, more of a San Francisco, Rams style of offense.
Who's that kid from? I hate to keep doing this to you. There's a kid from Texas Tech who's big and is a receiver. I can't remember. And he has like a alliteration for his name. It's weird, kind of an interesting last name. I'm sorry. This is terrible radio.
While he's the guy the Cowboys drafted last year, TJ Vasher, or signed.
No. There's another guy that's in the draft this year who's kind of a later round guy, but who's like, big and bulky, and he's kind of like a discount Treylon Burks, right? So, anyways, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys were looking for more of those kind of guys. Get the ball in their hands, have them break tackles, difficult to bring down. Because, I mean, you can say what you want about Cooper, incredible route runner, but for a guy who was 6'2", 220, he didn't break a ton of tackles,
It's Eric Zukanah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Sukanama, I believe.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very, just kind of those types of physical specimens who, if you can get the ball, and the guy that I'm talking about is a very much a late round guy, like a late day 2, day 3 guy. So I think those are those are the types of folks that you can look at who potentially are game breakers with the ball in their hand, right? Because here's the other thing to keep in mind: Pollard is not going to be around for too much longer. So, and Pollard is already kind of your best guy at that. Like, let's get the ball in his hands and let's see what he can do in space.
And that's really CD's best trait as well, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways as well, it is. And I think, so I think you can find other guys that you need to replace those types of players, guys that that the play design can get the guy open long enough for you to get the ball in his hands and then let him work his magic with the ball in his hands. That's what everyone saw Deebo Samuel have so much success with last year. And I think that's more of the kind of, again, going back to hitting the easy button for Dak.
Exactly.
Right? Finding simple ways to get the balls to the playmakers so that they can take the ball and do something with it, as opposed to making Dak have to throw, extremely and very difficult throws from the pocket in order to gain, even a little bit of yardage.
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to thinking about the Saints game from this year, where I think it was Amari's only catch. Dak had to throw a bullet down the seam between two guys, or in that same game, threw a pass to CeeDee Lamb down the seam where there was no window at all. Dak can do it, right? And that's why you pay an elite quarterback, is to make those type of throws. But you also have to have 7 or 8 plays a game that are just easy run-of-the-mill throws that get you 17 yards, that help move the offense. That's what the Cowboys lacked last year, and they need more of that. And I'm wondering if that's what they're going to be looking for in the draft, whether that's, Treylon Burks in the first round, or Calvin Austin, the tiny receiver from Memphis is really good after the catch. Players like that more so than, I don't know, Drake London from USC, who is really just a power forward and everything is contested. Yeah. I don't think the Cowboys are looking for that type of receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, they still have – I think maybe the idea is that they've loosened their standards on what the wide receiver position looks like. I don't think they've completely given up on it, right? Yeah, I mean, I think you still have to have a certain amount of requisite speed and maybe what really it seems like the size thresholds that have maybe been kind of altered.
Yeah, because there was a time where, and I remember going back to track of this, during the Jason Garrett era, they never started a receiver on the outside that was under 200 pounds. Every single one of those guys was heavier. And now maybe that's not going to be the case. Maybe they'll lighten that up a little bit. We'll see. All right. Good. Do you have any more thoughts?
I was just going to say, I mean, the fact that the James Washington got signed, I mean, to me shows that there's maybe a change in the thought on exactly who can play outside wide receiver on this team.
Yep, absolutely. All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, you can download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts: Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Follow the show on YouTube. Locked On Cowboys. We've gotten a ton of support over there over the last couple of days. We cannot thank you guys enough. Follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. And we'll see you guys next time.